Well, what a pleasure. It's the most fascinating quarter 8. I'm very pleased that Ms. Mosquera and I are having the privilege to have a chance to, for the last time, appear for you before you embark on the rest of your career filled with courses you prefer in year 3 and internships and fields. And as all the introductory courses are designed for, is that it gives you a chance to see, well, maybe the topics of this course are inspiring enough to select the subsequent courses in the same field as this one. And the current course, as I mentioned yesterday morning at the introduction, is the sort of window to probably 10 courses in the specializations, ranging from straightforward finance, straightforward investment, dispute settlement, arbitration, taxation, European taxation, international taxation, comparative taxation, multinationals and corruption, corporate social responsibility, and investment law, and many others. And the reason that one course is a window to so many subsequent courses has to do with the developments in the legal profession. And the developments are, and I just repeat things I tell you over and over again, the developments are that legal professionals like Ms. Mosquera and I are recruited by clients to solve problems, not to just be an expert in one field, but to have an integral, an inclusive attempt of solving a real problem. And the beauty of life, and globalization, integration of societies, is that those problems are extremely complex. So we thought, while studying law, Ms. Mosquera and I, that, well, we specialize in corporate law or tax law, and then I have an easy life. I deal with 10 R's, and I make a living. And there they came, the problem. That taxation was seen in the context of sort of investment. Corporate law was seen in the desire of the entity to operate cross-border and be a corporate citizen in other countries, and how should that then be translated to the corporate structure in terms of organs, and so forth and so forth. And we feel in quarter 8 that you're ready to be confronted with those varieties of issues and problems. So this is less straightforward than, let's say, tort law. Less straightforward than, let's say, contract drafting. But we build on those courses because now we translate that, say, legal thinking and those ingredients, and we translate it to integrated solutions for very complex problems. And what we basically test is all kinds of parts of your brain that were not in use already. And we will especially share with you many question marks, because we are not here to claim that we know the solution, let alone that we can train you for those solutions. And it took us a while to accept that, because as an educator you want to know what you talk about, and then you want to teach you so that you are ready product at the end. But you are trained, and you know those mantras, and they are open day mantras and graduation type of ceremony mantra. We train you for in the problems of 20 years from now. Because your junior job will be go with the flow, shut up and work. To be implemented. And then at the senior stage, you will be confronted with problems we don't know anything about. You don't know anything about yet. And you by then forgot that you were studying in LLB in The Hague. So we share many question marks. And those question marks are also a window to advanced courses, especially the year 4 courses. Law and economics, law and ethics, law and practice, where we spend 3 times 5 credits on question marks. No answers, just questions. Like, what is the economic analysis of this transaction? What is the economics behind the death panel? What is the economics behind your current process of choosing a life partner? Next to the beautiful laugh you think that is involved in. But which part of your brain think, would this make a decent husband, income-wise, house-wise, not hitting me in the kitchen and being fair to the children, and these type of economic analysis, whether the deal you make is a decent one. Well, that is sort of the characteristic of the course, and then, you know, as we also try to make it very concrete, and we have a couple of case studies, and I have 10 more in reserve, so maybe halfway the course I will show you a little bit more case studies, and we try to do sort of role play through that case studies, and that we ask you mentally to position yourself in those roles, and we introduce all those actors for that reason, and then you are sort of at a certain stage in week 5, you're in the rainforest of the Republic, the People's Republic of Laos, you know, next to Thailand and Vietnam. And then in that rainforest, you have to build a hydroelectric dam, you know, a huge concrete structure in a river, and then the river rises, and then there's a turbine that produces electricity. And when you are in that rainforest and you see those trees and the huts of the villages, what does it take? What is your role to get from the tree to a functioning dam with all these issues connected to it, and all the equivalent projects and cases that are subject of our teaching this quarter. So let's say that you have a functioning society and that you have a tax office to realize the desire to get some income as a state so that you can do something. And how do you design that? How do you collect taxes if half of your population do not have a bank account? And what percentage do you apply? And how do we deal in the Netherlands with the funny reality that we are sort of quasi-Bahamas islands with all those headquarters of companies not paying any taxes anywhere? And then the UK consumers of Starbucks sort of boycotting Starbucks because they do not pay anything in terms of tax in the UK. And then 3 weeks ago they said, okay, let's move the headquarters from Amsterdam to London and start paying tax. And these type of things. Well, so I'm very pleased to be here. Ms. Mosquera has to prepare other courses. Do you want to add something before we start, let's say, the proper slide? Yes, go ahead.
Thank you so much. Welcome. I couldn't see you yesterday, but now you see my face, and I think that some of you already know from Project 3, when we work in a lot of tax investment accounting, so please take that information again with you. And also, of course, I'm teaching here a lot of taxation. I'm here taxation, that will be me. But I'm also working with issues regarding investment, sustainable development, corruption, multinational corporate social responsibility when we teach it in law and ethics. So we will try to deal with those issues. And I will see you, I believe, like in 4 weeks, 4 or 5 weeks. So in the meantime, you're not going to see me, but I know you're in good company. So, and then after, I see you later. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. We have a sort of structure, and actually I'm taking courses too. The course is how to lecture, and to assist that I have a little video camera over there, and at home with people. No one wants to watch it, but I will watch it. I will reflect on that and so forth. So today 3 things, and in the workshop lecture next week we finish off and answer questions and see and check whether you are on your way in EU finance and development. 3 topics: context, terms, and let's say the grand scheme. And so what's the story of this course? So let's move to that first chapter, the context. And I promised in the opening lecture to show you the pictures of the Mostar Bridge, connected to the word Bellum War, in the series of Jus ad bellum, Jus in bellum, and Jus post bellum, as in the international rules that dictate, let's say, UN Charter, whether you are allowed to start a war, according to the books, only in self-defense. Then the humanitarian law, quarter 6, topics of while in war, how should you behave? Combatants, non-combatants, and so forth. And then the beauty of war is that somewhere down the line they end. And then the tradition in the last 10,000 years, after the bridge is demolished, then you start to reconstruct it. And what is then the legal framework and the sort of relevant legal instruments that are the tools to get from the ruined bridge to the new bridge? And here you see the construction activities. So a temporary bridge, Bosnia-Herzegovina, Balkan War, 90s. So when you were in kindergarten, that time. Here you see some logos of sponsors of the bridge, and that is part of this course. So where is the money coming from? Finance. To develop. And one institute you know, that is the International Monetary Fund. Here you see their headquarters in Washington. And we will meet that institution as one of the, let's say, United Nations family of organizations. And they are in the news quite often when states are in troubled situations like Greece and many other states. And they have a journal, and the journal is called Finance and Development. And that was my inspiration to call this course Finance and Development. Because we all love development. You know, personal development, regional development, cultural development, but who's going to pay? Because for personal development you need a school, for school you need teachers and a building, and so forth. So that is why finance and development are in one hand. Well, I mentioned already the other courses. The other context is poverty. Poverty as in, let's say the old picture, $1 a day. Nowadays, due to inflation, we talk about $1.25 per day income for the head of the family. Meaning that you make $365 a year as your income. And that is a topic, we will discuss that next week, that as a working definition we call poverty. And in the Netherlands the average yearly income is €39,000 per year. And the richest country in Europe is, I believe, Liechtenstein with €43,000. The UK is €32,000. The US is $31,000 per year. And so compare that, thousands, to 360 euro. And so if you have an outrageous weekend in Barcelona after getting some credits, you spend 2 times that amount. And that amounts for your family for a whole year. That is, let's say, one of the aspects of poverty. We will study literature that asks the question, is that poverty? Or are there alternative ways to look at poverty? Maybe those people with that type of income are very happy. Yeah? Is it helpful to qualify that as poverty? But let's say, let's follow for now our gut feeling and say, that sounds pretty bad. And that gut feeling in the last 60 years was the engine of the international community to work on poverty. One of the latest instruments, we will need that in detail, is the Millennium Development Goals of the United Nations in the year 2000, in which the ambition was to reduce poverty by 2015. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's next year. And progress is made. Progress is made. In China, no one is dying from starvation anymore, as they did 20 years ago. And so there are many examples. And so it is possible. If there's any sort of non-legal aspect of this course, then it is the aspect of hope. I think there's hope. With a new generation and the good ones of the old generation, and we can change things. And these are the graphs, you know, and let's say around the articulation of the Millennium Development Goals, there were 2 billion people with $1 a day on 6 billion. And so 1/3 of world population. So not just a few in the desert, but 1/3. And that is now down to 0.7 billion people in that type of poverty. For 700 million. How many citizens are there in the EU? 500 million, voting next month. And so the whole population of the EU, European Union, plus a few more in poverty. So that is a context. The third context is, how do we look at the world? And we regard this map to be upside down. And that is because we are brainwashed. We're all brainwashed. And the United Nations is continuing that by having a sort of branch, a department that decides we count years in the common era, so it's 2014. So what the heck, that in Islamic counting it's not 2014, and in Jewish counting it's not 2040. And we decide north is up, so consequently this map is upside down. And one of the theories, and somewhere my gut feeling says maybe that's a true theory, is that part of the problem of poverty and the miseries on the globe is that we think that up is north and down is south. Because funny enough, the majority of the poverty is south. And it has to do with our history. So basically this course is also an invitation, once in a while, put the map upside down in your own head and ask yourself the concepts I use and the ideas I have, lovely inherited from your parents and schools and so forth, in terms of how things are, what is the actual history. We all know that history books in primary and secondary education are quite often lies. And so in the Netherlands, we were a colonial power, and we did war crimes in Indonesia, and in our history books we call it troubles. And each country has many of these pages, you know, about slavery, about Armenians, about everything, women. And this map is the invitation and the trigger. Question these things for yourself. The industry to combat poverty and misery is huge. So in the last 60 years we spent billions on combating poverty. So in an average year there are 15,000 missions to do projects to make people happy in 54 countries. And a country like Vietnam gets 3 official visits per day. So international airport of the capital of Vietnam, so each day 3 sort of officials, you know, suits, luggage, they arrive to check how the donations and the aid is spent and whether the people are already happy. Because with all those good intentions we collect money to alleviate poverty. Tanzania has to write 2,400 reports per year for all those donors. Money is spent on advisors. And then a tough one. In all those reports, only half of the money is reported on. And the other half that is donated and spent and invested is not recorded in those reports. So there are a few possibilities. That, let's say, the reporting skill is not that great in the globe. But the other theory is that people build private houses and pools and cars and prostitutions and heroin and all kinds of other things from that money. And we have a sort of professional word for that, it's called corruption. And we have a whole course on it. And the United Nations target is to at least have 85% of the money spent to be recorded on. So we accept the reality that, well, maybe we lose 15%. That would already be a huge achievement. So I don't know whether there were dreams so far in this audience, but this is sort of the reality. And then aid. And nowadays we do not talk about aid anymore. We talk about cooperation and assistance and these types. Because aid is like we, the rich north, and you, poor, between brackets, stupid, end of brackets, poor person, let me help you. And that is not the right atmosphere. It took us 10 years to get that out of the sort of system, but let's say your old employers will easily call it aid. And the problem of that money spent is that it is tied. So it is like, here I give you 2 million to build a water cleaning system. But hey, here in the Netherlands we train good water cleaning engineers in Delft. So you should spend that millions on that engineer and his plane ticket and hotel and his family. So yes, in the last 60 years we have very generous sort of giving tradition, but all the money was ultimately spent in the north. Because the idea was, well, we have the knowledge. So, well, we're not spending your money just for nothing. So basically, you could look back at history as, and I step on toes of all the good intentions, and I step on toes on all the exceptions to my little story. But let's say those are the issues that are identified by the United Nations and the actors we will meet in this course as one of the problems. Money going away and money basically spent in the north instead of the south. Around the topic we have practices. So governmental practice is the practice in which you have to write those reports, in which you are the recipient of developments and activities and investments. In the corporate practice, you are the investor or the engineer that is sort of making sewage systems and dams and hospitals and so forth. There is a huge activity in civil society or non-governmental organizations, or the general interest practice as we call it, as the reserve category, with plenty of job opportunities out there, partly situated here in The Hague. And then the individual practice. Individual practice is the least represented in this course. And that's then compensated with family law in the comparative law. Bemmelen I talked about, the other courses I talked about. This is part of the EU law line, and I will explain that in a minute. So the EU treaties are one of the bases. And one of the reasons of making it a EU law topic is that the EU is by far the biggest investor and donor of all the finance and development on the globe. And we talked about it. Yes, the EU is, let me go to the next slide. So